This is just the beginning. Together, we can build a better future for all students here.
He was a greedy man that always saw education as a way to take himself out of poverty. This is the story of Professor Udoka the Cunning, a man whose tongue was as silver as the moon, but whose heart was as dark as a moonless night. So, sit comfortably, hit that subscribe button so you never miss our stories, and let us begin. Long ago, in the proud kingdom of Azumaland, there stood a great learning house, the Academy of Wisdom and Knowledge. Students came from villages near and far, carrying their dreams in clay pots and their hopes wrapped in kente cloth. Now, among the many teachers at this academy, there was one whom everyone spoke about, Professor Udoka. Ah, Professor Udoka. The students whispered his name with fear mixed with awe. He wore the finest agbada robes embroidered with golden threads. His walking stick was carved from ebony, and when he struck it against the ground, even the birds stopped singing. He taught the sacred subject of ancient philosophy and modern success, the very knowledge that could open doors to chieftaincy, wealth, and respect. But here is what the young students did not know. Professor Udoka had a wicked secret. You see, every semester, Professor Udoka would choose certain students, usually the ones who struggled, the ones who needed his help the most, and he would make them a deal. He would lean close with his oiled beard and whisper, "My dear child, I see you are struggling with your studies. The examination is coming and I fear you may not pass, but I am a generous man. If you bring me a special offering, perhaps help with my personal business, run errands for me, or bring gifts from your family, I will ensure your success." Some students brought him yams and palm wine, others washed his clothes or worked in his farm for free. The poorest ones borrowed money from relatives, sinking their families into debt just to buy the professor's favor. And the worst part? Even after all their sacrifices, Professor Udoka would sometimes still fail them, claiming they hadn't done enough. Many students suffered in silence, too afraid to speak out. After all, who would believe them over the great Professor Udoka? Now, in that same semester, a new student arrived at the academy. Her name was Amara, which means grace. Amara came from a small village where the earth was red and the people were proud. She was the first in her family to attend the academy, and her grandmother, a woman so old she remembered when the white man first came, had sold her prized goats to pay Amara's fees. Before Amara left her village, her grandmother held her hand tight and said, "My granddaughter, you carry not just your dreams, but the dreams of all of us who never had this chance. Walk with your head high. Let no one bend you like a weak reed. Remember, the spider may be small, but she weaves a web that catches even the mighty hawk." Amara arrived at the academy with a sharp mind and even sharper sense of justice. She noticed things others overlooked. She asked questions others feared to ask. Within the first moon, she had heard the whispers about Professor Udoka. One evening, as the sun painted the sky orange and purple, Amara sat with her roommate, Chioma, who was crying. Amara touched her friend's shoulder gently and asked, "Sister, why do your tears fall like rain in the dry season?" Chioma wiped her eyes and said through her sobs, "It is Professor Udoka. He says I will fail his course unless I bring him 50,000 naira by next week. Amara, my family has no such money. My father is just a fisherman. What will I do?" Amara's eyes became like fire. She stood up, tall and straight as the Iroko tree itself, and declared, "This is wickedness. This is injustice. No one should have to buy their grades like yams in the market. We must speak to the dean." But Chioma grabbed her arm in fear. "No, Amara, you don't understand. Others have tried. The dean and Professor Udoka are old friends. They drink palm wine together every week. Professor Udoka's brother is married to the dean's sister. No one can touch him. He is too powerful. But Amara was not like the others. That night, as her roommate slept, she sat beneath the window, looking at the stars, and remembered her grandmother's words about the spider. She whispered to herself, "If Professor Udoka is the hawk, then I must be the spider. I will weave a web so clever, so tight, that he will trap himself." For the next several days, Amara watched and listened. She spoke quietly with other students, earning their trust with her kind words and steady courage. One by one, they shared their stories. There was Emeka, who had given Professor Udoka his father's entire palm oil harvest. There was Blessing, who had cleaned the professor's house every weekend. There was Kunle, whose family had borrowed money at terrible interest rates, and now his younger siblings could not afford school fees. Amara listened to each story, and with each one, her resolve grew stronger. She carried a small notebook, and in it, she wrote down every detail: the dates, the amounts, the promises made and broken. But Amara knew that evidence alone would not be enough. Professor Udoka was cunning and he had powerful friends. She needed something more, something that would make even his protectors turn away from him. She needed to catch him in the act, with witnesses that could not be silenced or dismissed. So, Amara devised a plan, and it was as intricate as any spider's web. She went to Professor Udoka's office one afternoon when the sun was high. She knocked 3 times and his voice boomed from within. "Enter." The office smelled of incense and old books. Professor Udoka sat behind his massive desk like a king on a throne. He looked at Amara with eyes that seemed to weigh her worth in gold. "Ah, young Amara, I have heard about you. Bright student, they say. Top of your class in 3 subjects. What brings you to my office?" Amara lowered her eyes respectfully, playing the part of a humble student. "Professor, sir, I come seeking your wisdom and guidance. I fear I am struggling with your course. The philosophy of the ancient is deep like the ocean, and I am drowning. I hear that you are a generous man who helps students in need." Professor Udoka leaned back in his chair, a smile spreading across his face like oil on water. "Indeed, indeed, I am always willing to help dedicated students. But you must understand, my dear, that special help requires special arrangements. Perhaps you have heard from your classmates." Amara nodded slowly. "Yes, Professor, I have heard, and I am prepared to make whatever arrangements are necessary. My uncle is a wealthy trader in Lagos. He has sent me money for my education, and I am willing to share it with you to ensure my success." Professor Udoka's eyes gleamed with greed. "Your uncle is wise to invest in your future. How much has he sent?" Amara pretended to hesitate. "He has sent me 200,000 naira, but I would need some of it for my own expenses. Perhaps I could give you 100,000 naira. The professor laughed, a sound like stones grinding together. "Your generosity moves me, my child. 100,000 naira, and I will guarantee that you not only pass my course, but receive the highest marks. No examination will trouble you. Come back tomorrow at this same time, bring the envelope, and we shall conclude our arrangement." Amara thanked him profusely and left, but her heart was pounding not with fear, but with triumph. The hawk had taken the bait. That night, Amara gathered 5 of her most trusted classmates. She told her the plan, and though they were afraid, they agreed to help. The next day, they would hide in the small storage room adjacent to Professor Udoka's office. The door would be left slightly open, and they would record everything with their mobile phones. Amara also did something else. She went to see Professor Adebayo, the only lecturer at the academy known for his integrity. He was an old man, thin as in reed, who refused to join in the corruption that plagued the institution. She told him everything, and though he was shocked, he agreed to stand as a witness to what was about to happen. The next afternoon, Amara returned to Professor Udoka's office. Her 5 friends were already hidden in the storage room, their phones recording. Professor Adebayo waited outside in the corridor, listening through the thin walls. Amara entered and closed the door behind her. Professor Udoka was practically rubbing his hands together with anticipation. Ah, my dear Amara, you have returned. Do you have what we discussed? Amara reached into her bag slowly. Yes, Professor, but first I must ask you something. If I give you this money, you promise that I will pass your course, that I will receive excellent marks regardless of my actual examination performance? Professor Udoka waved his hand dismissively. Of course, that is our agreement. Once you give me the envelope, consider yourself already graduated with honors. I have done this for many students before you. It is simply how things work in the real world, my child. Those who understand this succeed. Those who do not remain poor and powerless. Amara pulled out an envelope, but she did not hand it over. Instead, she held it in front of her and spoke loudly and clearly. So, you are admitting, Professor Udoka, that you accept money from students in exchange for grades? That you have done this many times before? That you are currently offering to give me marks I have not earned in exchange for 100,000 naira? The professor's face changed. Suspicion crept into his eyes like a snake. What is this? Why do you speak so formally? Give me the envelope. But Amara stepped back. I speak formally, Professor, so that everyone can hear clearly, so that the 5 students hiding in that storage room with their recording devices can capture every word, so that Professor Adebayo standing in the hallway can testify to what you have just confessed. The color drained from Professor Udoka's face. He stood up so quickly, his chair fell backward. What? This is a trick. You dare to deceive me? The storage room door burst open, and the 5 students emerged, holding their phones high. Professor Adebayo entered through the main door, his face stern with righteous anger. Professor Udoka looked around wildly, like a trapped animal. He pointed a shaking finger at Amara. You scheming girl, you will regret this. I will have you expelled. I will ruin you. But Amara stood her ground, her voice steady as a drum beat. No, Professor, it is you who will face ruin. We have recorded your confession, we have witnesses, and we have something else. She opened her bag and pulled out her notebook. I have the testimony of 17 students you have exploited. I have dates, amounts, and details of your crimes. Some of these students are willing to come forward now that they know they are not alone. Your web of corruption ends today. Professor Udoka collapsed back into his chair, all the power seeming to drain from his body. Within an hour, the dean was summoned. Though he was initially reluctant to believe the accusations against his friend, he could not deny the evidence. The recorded confession was clear. The testimonies were consistent. Even some of the other professors, who had long suspected Professor Udoka but lacked proof, now came forward with their own observations. The dean had no choice. Professor Udoka was suspended immediately, and an investigation was launched. Over the following weeks, the full extent of Professor Udoka's corruption was revealed. He had been taking advantage of students for more than 10 years. He had accumulated wealth through their suffering, building houses in his village while students' families went into debt. But now, justice moved like a river in flood season, unstoppable and cleansing. Professor Udoka was dismissed from the academy in disgrace. Criminal charges were filed against him. The money he had accumulated was seized, and arrangements were made to compensate some of the families he had harmed. But the story does not end there. With Professor Udoka's downfall, you see, Amara's courage created something even more powerful. Her classmates, inspired by her example, formed a student alliance to protect each other from exploitation. They created anonymous reporting systems. They educated incoming students about their rights. They worked with the few honest professors to reform the academy's policies. Slowly, like dawn breaking over the savannah, change came to the Academy of Wisdom and Knowledge. Chioma, the roommate who had first confided in Amara, graduated with honors and became a teacher herself, one who treated her students with dignity and fairness. Emeka recovered his family's palm oil money through the compensation fund and was able to help his younger siblings attend school. The academy, though it had been wounded by corruption, began to heal. And Amara, she graduated top of her class through her own merit and hard work. She returned to her village, where her grandmother, now even older but still sharp of mind, embraced her with tears of joy. Her grandmother said, "You remember what I told you about the spider and the hawk? You have proven that even the smallest among us can bring down the mighty when we use wisdom,
courage, and unity. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, this story teaches us that real education cannot be bought. They must be earned through dedication, honesty, and hard work. If this story has touched your heart or opened your eyes, I encourage you to share it with your friends, your family, your classmates, your colleagues. Share it especially with young people who might be facing exploitation in their schools or workplaces. Let them know they are not alone. Let them know that change is possible. And please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our stories. Every week, we bring you tales from our ancestors, stories that carry wisdom, hope, and strength for the challenges we face today. Leave a comment below telling me, have you ever witnessed or experienced a situation like the one in this story? Your story might inspire someone else who is struggling with the same situation right now. Together, we are stronger. Together, we can create a world where Professor Udokas are stopped, where Amaras are celebrated, and where every student can learn with dignity and fairness. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next story.